What's up, Buck Squad? I'm Ryan Lavoie, and I'm going to tell you why it's time for the offense to put the pedal to the metal.
Buck Squad, what's up? Marcus Ray, Michigan All-American. I'm going to tell you why this Tampa Bay defense needs to be revamped.
And I'm James Yarcho, and I'm going to tell you why I pretty much lost all hope in this team's ability.
Hey, Tampa Bay, it's the Buccaneers squad. Everything Tampa Bay Buccaneers every week. Breaking down all the big hits and game-changing plays from the heart of the Sunshine State, the way only the Locked On Podcast Network can. With a touch of the Buccaneer way, the Buccaneer Squad Show starts now.
Welcome to the Locked On Bucs Squad Show. I am Ryan Lavoie. I'm filling in for Jaron Spohr on tonight's show. Of course, I've got my guys Marcus Ray and James Yarcho, as you're very familiar with us today. We're going to be talking about this Buccaneers and Dolphins game coming up on Sunday. Of course, we'll begin by previewing the matchup. We'll talk about the key injuries to note. We'll look around the National Football League, what might be interesting going into week number 17. And of course, by the end of the program, we'll let you know what we expect to happen at Hard Rock Stadium in Miami. But guys, again, the Bucs coming off of another very difficult to swallow loss, yet somehow with 2 weeks remaining in the season, despite being losers of 6 of 7, the Bucs still control their own destiny. But guys, it's got to start with a win in Miami. So again, my first question to you is, and I know but the open that the confidence is clearly waning, and understandably so, but what can the Bucs do? Let's start on the offensive side of the ball to right the wrongs of the last several weeks.
Well, starting off, Ryan, I think you made a great point last night on our other show when you said play action pass. That's something that's really missing. And I think a lot of teams are allowing the Bucs to run the football because the Bucs run game, it doesn't scare anybody. I mean, they got 3 decent running backs. Okay, they've had a banged up offensive line all season. And so if you allow the Bucs to rush for 160, 170, then that means that they're not throwing the ball. They're not using their weapons. Their weapons aren't in the backfield. Like Bucky is not Walter Payton or Barry Sanders by no means, but he's a good running back. But at the same time, you want the Bucs to run the football because if they get hot throwing the ball to their 4 guys, you got Mike, J-Mac, Chris, Emeka. Here's the thing. You rather them run the ball and milk the clock and use time of possession against themselves. It's really a weapon against themselves because if you're going to drive the ball, turn it over, or only get a field goal, but you can't stop a nosebleed from running defensively, then it doesn't matter what you do offensively. So I just think that, going vertical is something that we haven't seen out of them, and I've said it the last 3 shows. And if your longest pass was on a desperation situation to Emeka Egbuka, which was a 40-yard hell of a throw, hell of a catch across the middle, that's not enough. Because if you watch how the Bucs lost, they gave up the big one. They gave up something over the top, and it happened right before the half, and it happened for the go-ahead field goal. So if you look at what's hurting them, it's something that they don't have offensively. So they have great receivers, but nobody gives up the deep ball against the Bucs. And so they have to. That means if you can't flip the field in one pass, then you have to earn everything. And then if you're going to play Mike Jordan in there, and he's not going to pick up stunts and different types of games up front from a defensive lineman, and they're wrapping around with linebackers and giving up sacks in crucial moments, then you're just not going to beat anybody.
Yeah, and I'm really interested. I didn't have time today to dive into the all 22, and I mentioned on my live show that there was a specific play I wanted to look at, and I believe it happened in the second quarter. It might have been the third, but it was a dump off to Rachaad White, and when you watch the snap, Emeka Egbuka had free release, and both corners stayed low. And I'm like, okay, what are the safeties doing? Because you couldn't see it from the broadcast. What are the safeties doing that Baker didn't take that shot? Because to me, that was a 40, 50-yard touchdown, like easy money. And so I was wondering, was it the coverage? But then the other thing, not taking deep shots, especially when you have all these weapons, is it because either Josh Grizzard or Baker Mayfield or a combination of the two just don't trust the offensive line to hold up long enough to let those routes develop? And you wonder, where the confidence level is with this offensive line. I'll get more into Grizz in a minute, but are they having to keep everything short? Because the Bucs didn't, Baker didn't attempt a pass more than 10 yards down the field until the fourth quarter. Like the longest pass that he had up until that point was a 10-yarder to Mike on the opening drive, and then Mike got 3 yards after catch. So Emeka Egbuka's one catch for 40 yards led the team in receiving yards because they weren't taking those shots. And, I just wonder, is it Baker's injury? Is it Grizz or Baker or both not trusting the offensive line? What is it? Because you saw Baker under immense pressure against this Carolina Panthers defense that has not been good at generating pressure against the quarterback. That's been a consistent theme with that defense all season long, and they lose their best defensive lineman in the game. So this has to be about the trenches on the offensive side of the ball for the Bucs, that they're just not getting the job done.
And when you look at some of the statistics from that game, and I know we got to preview what's coming up ahead, but just for the context of why it's important to stretch the field, what you guys are talking about, Mike Evans had 31 yards receiving last week. Chris Godwin had 30, both on 5 catches. And that is the fewest amount of yards that either one of those guys have had when having 5 or more catches. And so it tells you they're not stretching the ball down the field. And as you parlay it into the Miami game, like, yes, on a piece of paper, we're going to be able to analyze that Miami's rush defense is worse than their pass defense. And that's awesome. And again, we talked about that. Yeah, the Bucs are preventing themselves from having to go out on defense as many possessions, but we can't sit here all season long and say, when's Mike Evans coming back? Man, when's Chris Godwin going to be healthy? Man, is Jalen McMillan going to play? We can't be saying all those things this year, using it in context and saying, okay, this is why the offense is not humming along. And then they all arrive and the Bucs not use those guys. So I think it's important to go into Miami, a game that, your season could end with a loss. You also could get helped out by Seattle against Carolina, but the Bucs are not going to be the best version of themselves. And maybe it's a futile wish at this point, now that we're 15 games in, but they're not going to be the best version of their offense without using these wide receivers. I mean, that should just be a very obvious point, that you can't have a first-round draft pick. You can't have the Hall of Famer Mike Evans. You can't have Chris Godwin in the Hall of Very Good and just be running 35 times, content to throw. If they had not had the 2-minute drill at the end of the game, they might not have had but about 20 pass attempts to 35 to 40 rushes. I mean, that would have been a ratio, which, again, it might work for a different team, but I don't think that this team is built that way.
Well, I think it was a good strategy. It just kind of backfired because they didn't score on their second possession. They actually got a field goal. I think if they get a touchdown there, I think it's a different ballgame if they go up 14-3. Like, the Bucs can't seem to separate from anybody. And I honestly think that the Bucs have to be careful. I mean, this is a trap game. Okay, so let's just say the Dolphins aren't very good. Let's not forget, though, they did have a 4-game win streak right after the mid-season. It beat Buffalo, which is a team that the Bucs lost to. They actually played Carolina to a 3-point game in week 5. So, I mean, this team isn't good, but they have nothing to lose, everything to gain. Obviously, Miami didn't play very well. Joe Burrow just scorched them. I mean, that's something that Cincinnati does, is, they place all their chips on offense, and then they can't stop anybody either. So Miami lost to Pittsburgh. That was a nasty-looking game. Aaron Rodgers kind of went crazy with the dink and dunk. He went check down Cousins on him. But I really think, I'm starting to question the heart and soul of the Bucs as an organization. Not even just offense, defense, special teams. Obviously, Johnson got some good returns, to help that offense. Baker's playing with a shoulder wrap. There are no more excuses on offense because everybody's back. Defensively, they're getting dialed up in situational football. Todd Bowles calls zero coverage, and they give up a big one, and they never quite mentally recovered from that. Young Morrison had the pass interference, and guy trying to make a play on the sideline. That's going to happen. The problem is the Bucs just don't show up when it matters. Their 2-minute offense is so shaky and flaky that it kind of makes me sick. It's hard to watch. Like even right before the half, like for Carolina to even get the ball back, to even have an opportunity to score. Did you see? I mean, just the play calling, the lack of sense of urgency, and then at the end of the game, they didn't get it done. And James, I saw you blame Mike for that interception, and it was Mike's fault. At the same time, Baker threw the football, so it's like in football. It's such a great game that when one person mess up, everybody messed up. And so it's like, it's just a complete debacle and failure. We saw that a few weeks ago when Baker had the ball last 2 minutes trying to drive, and then he turned it over in that game too. So I just don't know if they have what it takes to close out a tight game. See, remember when we first started this show, James, I said you need something called TNT. To win a championship, and it's called toughness and talent. When you have toughness and talent, that means you win close games and you win on the road. The Bucs can't win the close one. They cannot take a punch. They can't counter punch when it matters. And I honestly think the way Todd Bowles dropped them F-bombs in the press conference a week and a half ago, I honestly think that he dropped some more because he knows he's not saying what's going on. There's something wrong in that locker room.
Yeah, and it's reached a level now where, and I've said it for a couple of weeks, this looks like a team that has no confidence in themselves, and it's showing in these big moments. But yeah, I said to Julian Council, the host of Locked On Panthers, last week when he's like, I can't see the Bucs losing to Miami, and I said I absolutely can. I don't care that Tua is out and they start Quinn Ewers. They have Devon Achane. Devon Achane can beat the Buccaneers because they can't seem to get things right on defense. But Marcus, I'm so glad that you brought up the 2-minute drill at the end of that first half, and you brought up them settling for a field goal early in that game, because the main reason I don't have confidence in this team to be able to beat Miami, and I talked about it a lot on my live reaction, is situational play calling. I like Josh Grizzard. He's a good dude, but I don't think he was ready for this role. And I said it in the preview episode, if there was ever a time for him to let it all go, like really just go all in, bring out every bag of tricks that you have, do everything, air this thing out, it was against the Panthers. Because this was the first time all season the Bucs didn't have any game designations on the injury report. You had the healthiest offense you could possibly have all season long, and it was dink and dunk and handoff. You get inside the 5 with first and goal. You just scored on your previous possession on a shoulder fade to Mike. You run for a loss, and you settle for a field goal. That's inexcusable. Then that 2-minute drill, you start with a run. You let 30 seconds run off the clock. Then you have Baker dirt a ball to Ibuka. That was his only target until that 40-yarder. And then he has another missed throw. It's the perfect embodiment of how this season has gone when the Bucs get into these situations. And you could say the same about Todd Bowles and the defense. When they're in these situations where they can take control, where they can take a stand, where they can, put their stamp on a game, they just completely fall apart. And this is a team that waits every game for the one thing to go wrong before all the dominoes fall, and all 53 of them fall apart at once.
And as I've said many times, the situational football, I mean, that is how you win or lose in this league, because you're just not playing with blowouts very often. You're playing a bunch of one-possession games. I was taking a quick peek at it. Miami has not played as many one-possession games as some teams that have the 6-9 type of record, but they have lost 3 of them. If they flip those 3, they're 9-6, and they're talking about going to playoffs right now. We can go over the litany of close games the Bucs won early in the season and now have lost late in the season. So the calibration always is how you execute the 3rd and 5 in the 4th quarter, how you execute in the red zone, and do you get the 2-minute drills correct? As you guys have talked about, that's a huge story. Yes, we'll lament the interception at the end of the ball game, but really the game swung by the Bucs, who had controlled and executed their plan pretty well in the first half. when they have to give the ball back to Carolina and somehow all of a sudden they were losing going in the half. That really is what swung things. But we're going to take our first timeout. On the other side of this break, we're going to talk about the injury report. A little bit later, we're going to talk about Quinn Ewers and how the Bucs defense should react to the fact that it's not Tua Tagovailoa at quarterback. We'll go around the league and we'll do some score prediction. All that coming up after this timeout.
NFL Sundays move fast. One big play, and suddenly everything feels different. That's what makes live betting with FanDuel so exciting. You're not just watching the game, you're reacting to it in real time. With FanDuel, you can place bets as the action unfolds, every drive, every momentum swing, every highlight moment. Live betting is fast when the game starts to shift, a receiver gets hot, a defense tightens up, or the momentum flips after a turnover. There's live spreads and money lines adjust instantly, and player props as guys begin to heat up or cool off. The Tampa Bay Buccaneers are somehow still favorites to win the division at minus 175, while the Panthers, who have the one-game lead now, are at plus 140. The Bucs are also minus 174 to make the playoffs, plus 146 to miss the playoffs, needing to win their last two games. So if you want to be right in the middle of the action this season, visit FanDuel.com and place your NFL live bets all season long. FanDuel, the game moves fast, and so can you.
Welcome back to the Locked On Bucs Squad show. I'm Ryan Lavoie filling in for Jaron Sporer. Of course, this is just additional content that we do each and every week on the channel. Of course, you are very familiar with the great James Yarcho, who has been at it for a long time with the Locked On Bucs podcast. But again, we like to do this now, again, part of the week, once in the midweek, I guess early this week, and then once, of course, game reaction, and we'll do it throughout the offseason as well. But guys, let's check the injury reports again a little bit early in the week to know the statuses of everyone. We did see a couple of guys get banged up, particularly edge rushers, Anthony Nelson, who was able to return, I believe, but then Hassan Reddick, who also got banged up late in the game, a couple of the notables. Otherwise, guys, I think offensively they came out of it pretty unscathed. So again, injuries were, I think, at the top of their apex early in the season. They still have been in a much better place, even if there are going to be a couple more losses on that defense.
Yeah, I think Anthony Nelson's presence wasn't necessarily hurt. It wasn't felt as far as a loss. Obviously, he had the breakout game against the Saints. He made some plays last year, too. Depth is becoming an issue at edge rusher, and we actually saw JPP get in there, and he didn't bust a grape with a hammer. So it's just like the injury, as far as injuries are concerned, the offense is as healthy as it's been, and it's still not there. And I'm not quite sure if Grizz knows how to feed a big family. Like, I have 3 sons, and if you come to my house, I promise you're going to eat and you're going to drink. Everybody is going to get busy. But I don't know if he knows how to feed all of those mouths. That's a lot of mouths sitting at the table. Quality players, even at tight end. Even Cade came back from his little injury that he had. Not little, but he came back from his injury, and it's like everybody was out there. Now, as far as offensive line, I think that's the best 5 they can put out there, probably with the exception of Mike Jordan. But at the same time, Hassan Reddick, he made a couple of plays, but he just hasn't been, whether he's healthy or injured, he just hasn't been what they wanted him to be. And he finds a way to come up maim every other game or so. You'll just find him limping off the field. So I'm not sure how tough he is. But at the same token, you want to go into the playoffs or this type of situation as healthy as you can be. I would say, James, we started the show around Halloween, sometime at the end of October, and we said, maybe I said it, I was thinking they should have everybody back pre-Christmas, mid-December, and this team should be dangerous. At that time, they were 6-2. They've won 1 game since then, and they've been as healthy as they can possibly be. So I'm not sure if they weren't a better team when they were banged up. I think maybe I know the scheduling was a little different. You had those 3 juggernauts coming up out the break, the bye week, but to be banged up and be 6-2 and to beat 2 NFC West teams that are very good, and then to come out and lay an egg and get farted on in your house by the Saints and the Falcons, like the bottom feeders of your division, I don't even know if health even matters anymore for this team. I think they're mentally unhealthy. I think they're banged up. It's a bunch of grown men. Let me tell you something before I pass you the mic, James. When I played at Michigan, the great Lloyd Carr used to say, the cancer of a team starts with one or two people, and it's called the disease of me. What about me? Hey, I'm getting screwed. I'm not getting touches. I'm not playing. Well, when the disease of me becomes contagious to multiple people, then it becomes the fellowship of the miserable. Now it's a group of people that's sitting around having that same conversation. And I think that's what's stricken the Bucs in that locker room mentally. So they're physically as healthy as they've been. It's good to see J-Mac out there coming off a neck injury, running around and trying to catch screens and get a couple possession routes. But I think they're mentally crippled right now. And they were relying on what they used to do the last couple of years. Get out fast, have a mid-season little lull, and then finish strong. And like I told you, I was at the game last year when they beat the Panthers in that play-in game in week 17 or whatever it was, that very last game. I was physically in the stadium, and I watched it. And they threw that same fade ball to Mike Evans, too. That's their play down there. But I just don't think – I think the run is over when it comes to playing possum and then becoming a hero at the end of the year.
Yeah, and I think you're 100% right. The biggest injury on this team is above the shoulders, and it has spread throughout the entire locker room. And you wonder, you mentioned going all the way back to the Detroit game. Now, they got a win after that Detroit game, but was that kind of the moment when you lost Mike Evans to that collarbone injury? You lost that leadership. You lost that, that last kind of guy on the offense outside of Baker. Is that when things started to go south? Where did this team start to feel like they were snake bit? Did they start to feel like, I don't know if we can come back from this? And yeah, you go out and you beat the Saints, but the offense didn't look good against the Saints. That was the game that it took them, 87 tries, 1 yard to get into the end zone. That was all defense. Then you come out of the bye, you lose to the Patriots, you lose to the Bills, you lose to the Rams, and it feels like they never ever recovered. And they're looking to their leadership. These players are looking to their coaches, saying, what do we do? How do we fix this? And I just wonder if, and obviously we're not going to know. We might find out at some point. But are these players starting to feel like they don't trust the guy calling the plays? They don't trust their coaches, their leadership on that spectrum, to pull them out of this. Obviously, these guys loved playing for Todd Bowles. They would run through a wall for this guy, but now when they're not bouncing back after having dealt with these losing streaks in the middle of the season and then rallying and getting hot going into the postseason, have they lost faith in Bowles as the defensive guru? Did they lose faith in Josh Broussard and his ability to call plays? Because we have seen so many questionable decisions and a lot of the doing the same thing over and over and over again, week in and week out, that hasn't worked anyway. Why are you still continuing to do it? And I just wonder if all of that at this point is festering to the level that these guys are not fighting the way they would have last year or the year before, and they just want to be done.
And you talk about the mentality and the confidence side of things, and whether it be the lack of confidence in a coach or whether it just be doubt and the way the team is progressing as a whole, it's one of those things that there will never be a stat for. There will never be, as much as one might be in the analytics or this team is great at this and the other team is bad at that. You'll never be able to get all the way into the human mind and be able to put a tangible number on what a team or what a group of people are thinking. And, I think that, it's why when we see a kicker all of a sudden that's been awesome for 3 or 4 seasons, and then in the middle of his 5th season, he just gets the yips and misses 5 in a row. If you've ever played golf, you've hit a million great tee shots, and then you hit one wide left, and then the second one's wide right, and then you doubt your whole process. I mean, it's one of those things where everything comes to a head, even though it shouldn't. You've let one mistake become the two, become the three, and now all of a sudden you can't remember how you succeeded at times in the first place. So my question to you guys, and I'll start with you, Marcus, is when you are, and I don't know if you've been on a team that started to doubt itself or started to lose confidence or what have you. Obviously, you've been one of the great teams on the national championship team, but if a locker room is starting to fester, if there is going to be a mentality that's going downhill, I mean, what is the fix for that?
Well, my first 3 years at Michigan, we lost 4 games. As a matter of fact, my senior year of high school, they also lost 4 games. So there was a 4-year stretch in there where Michigan football lost 4 games. Then in '97, we ran the table. So some of it is you got to weed out some of the bad apples. I don't know who those bad apples are. I don't know what position it is. I don't know if it's management. I mean, I think Jason Light's done a good job. I don't know if his method is still working. A lot of times people think when you have success that that what you're doing is going to work forever. And honestly, when you watch Baker, like he doesn't even look comfortable in drop back pass. Like I don't think he trusts his offensive line enough for them to go vertical. Now he trusts a quick throw on the goal line to Mike. That's not drop back pass. That's called grip and rip. That's turn and burn. You just set hut and let it go. But when he has to backpedal, get into a 5-step drop and have to hold that ball for 4 seconds, he just doesn't look comfortable. And that's why I think both he and Mike panicked on that play. It was a situation where their timing and rhythm was just off. It's only Mike's second game back. But I just think when you start to have those issues, to answer your question though, Ryan, it starts at the top. And I'm not going to be as hard on Bowles as James is, where maybe it's time for Bowles to go. I just think he needs to allow someone else to call the defense. I just think he needs to go to the CEO reins, especially in these next 2 games, and let somebody else do it. But it's an ego league. It's a pride league. I mean, so those former players turned head coaches, they're not going to do that. And they'll go down swinging because that's what we're taught to do. But I just think when you look at the defense, I don't know if Antoine Winfield is considered a leader of the defense, but he's been absent since the Saints game. And he didn't drop well in zone coverage, like I mentioned last night. And they're just not getting any turnovers. They're not getting the sacks that we saw. I mean, at the halfway point, we're talking about a team that was, tops in defense statistically, total yards, points. They were somewhere up there. Sacks, they were top 5. I mean, they can't get to the quarterback anymore. So I just don't think nobody in the locker room trusts each other. And I also think they got complacent when they were 6-2 and thought that, because there's a slogan, like when I played in the NFL, they used to say, the quicker you get to 8 wins, then the quicker you'll get to the playoffs. And they haven't got to 8 wins. At 6-2, we would have thought, hey, 8 wins, or this is a 12-4 team, or this is a 11-5 group, or whatever. There's 17 games now, but it's like, hey, they're 12-5. No, sir. You're 7-8. You're biting your nails. Everybody's pointing a finger at each other, from the offensive line to the defensive line to trying to run the ball versus get the ball to your weapons. So I just think this is a team that when you start to lose, people start to point the finger. And coaches and quarterbacks get too much praise and too much blame. So I think you got to start there.
Yeah, when they were sitting at 6-2, when we were talking about coming out of the bye week, I was still saying this is a 12 or 13 win football team, because you are going to get Chris back. You are going to get Mike back. You are going to get, you're going to get Ben Bredesen back. And then you turn around and you lose him again. So, all this, I know fans are frustrated because there was a lot of hype in the offseason. There was a lot of hype early on. You had Baker as the odds-on favorite for the MVP at one point this season. The Bucs were being talked about as the best team in football. They were in the top 4 in Super Bowl odds. And it wasn't overhype. It wasn't hyperbole. It wasn't reading the room wrong. It's just been a matter of everything that can go wrong this season has gone wrong for this team. And I think it is going to cost Todd Bowles and a lot of these coaches their jobs. There are some that I would like to see stay, but I think for the most part, you're looking at a really interesting offseason of overhauling.
And I'm reminded, guys, of 2008. That was really the only other time I can recall the Bucs blowing something of this magnitude. Now, this is still a prolonged stretch, but of course, that was the season. The last year of John Gruden, they were 9-3, lost 4 in a row, including to a bad Raiders team. In a fit of irony, his former team knocking him out of his current job, and then again they cleared house. They changed just about everything. And I don't think that they're going to change the GM this time. I think Jason Light is secure, but obviously they continue down this road. They blow this division, and I do not see this coaching staff coming back. We are going to take our next timeout, and when we return, we will look around the National Football League. There are there's only 1 or 2 more spots to be decided, including the NFC South champion, of course, but there's a lot of seeding on the line and where teams can be expected to play their first round games, whether it's going to be at home because they won division or on the road. We'll talk about all that next.
Shopping should feel exciting, not confusing. And with CarGurus, you get the confidence you deserve. They cut through all the noise so you can actually see the best deals on cars you want. Because when it comes to a big purchase, you deserve the best deal. And CarGurus makes that whole process simple by giving you real information, real deal ratings, and more listings than anyone else. So you can shop the way you want. You'll love being able to filter by everything, mileage, trim, features. So you're only seeing cars that actually fit what you need. And their price drop alerts are a lifesaver. You get notified the second a car you're watching becomes a better deal. That's how I found my car last year. I told them what I wanted, the mileage I wanted, the colors that I wanted, and boom, I get notified of a price drop, and all of a sudden I'm in my car. So shop the way you want with the tools, data, and unbiased real deal ratings that make it easy. Buy or sell your next car today at CarGurus.com. That's CarGurus.com. CarGurus.com.
Welcome back to the Locked On Bucs Squad show, into our Around the League segment now. Of course, one game going on as we speak with the Colts taking on the 49ers. Important for the 49ers to keep pace in that loaded NFC West. Phillip Rivers, by the way, off to a pretty good start in that game, looking much better than he did last week. But we first want to talk about the elephants in the room, and that is what affects the Buccaneers, of course. And the Seattle Seahawks, Carolina Panthers game is paramount in that one. And also on the periphery of that, I know it seems grim now, but if the Bucs do win out or do find the way to win the division with the 8-9 scenario that we can talk about, they will, of course, host a playoff game. They'll be the 4 seed. They'll play the 5 seed. And the 5 seed is very likely going to be the NFC West. And it's very likely going to be after the Seahawks are able to beat the Rams, maybe the 49ers. So, guys, we'll kind of start there with, again, the scenario for Tampa here in the next couple of weeks, which, again, the easiest one is just win the next 2 and you're in. But also, what would happen if the Bucs can fulfill, finally, the win column a couple of times, win the division, and get in as the 4 seed? What would that 5 seed matchup look like?
Yeah, Ryan, I'm pretty impressed with your research, brother, and just understanding who's going to play where in the 4 and 5 matchup. And also last night you brought up how if Atlanta wins out, it'll be a 3-way tie. Let's just say everybody's 8-9, but they can't win the division, and neither can the Bucs. So right now Carolina's in the driver's seat. I just think, like, when I was kind of looking at the standings, and I think your Super Bowl champion is probably going to come from either the NFC West or someone in the AFC. I'm not sure if it's the Patriots or the Broncos or, hell, even Jacksonville after what they pulled off. I mean, you're talking about a team that goes into Denver and jumps on them. I mean, you're up 17 points in the fourth quarter in their house. So, you know, as Atlanta is the one team I think that affects the Bucs the most outside of themselves and Carolina. It's just that, you know, some of these teams right now are really hard to watch. But as I go around the league, like certain games that I think are standing out to me, like the Texans and Chargers, for me, that's going to be a huge game. Packers and Ravens, big game. shout out to Mike Tomlin for going into Detroit. I actually was going to go to that game. So yesterday when I had the white background, I was actually at my son's apartment who lives in Michigan because my younger son was at a 7-on-7 practice. So I'm in Detroit every weekend. I was going to go to that game, but we had to drive home. But I just think that the NFC South obviously is going to be I think it's going to be determined this weekend. I honestly think the Miami Dolphins are going to have a say, and I think they're going to put the dagger in our beloved Bucs. I just do. I think they're going to put them out of their misery because they're going to come in there with their hair on fire. They're going to punch in the mouth, and then, Waddle and those guys will catch passes and do their business. You got DA at running back, and I just don't trust anything Bucs right now. And I was a little nervous coming out of the break, but as we go around the league, though, this thing is kind of like shaping itself up. Obviously, the Eagles are going to, they've already kind of clinched their division. Chicago, I mean, they're right there. I'm not sure how good they really are, but that throw that Caleb made was just unbelievable. And they, was at home and they're red hot. And if the Panthers somehow come up out of that division, I think they'll upset somebody in that first round. But I would like to see the Bucs win out, get in there, mix it up healthy, because their record probably won't reflect how good they probably could be.
Yeah, I'm torn. I'm not the kind of person that's going to actively root for the Bucs to lose. I'm not that guy. I've never been that guy. However, I am the guy that likes to take the big picture approach. And I feel like if the Bucs find their way into the postseason, just to have, number one, the god-awful Monday night playoff game, because that's what it'll be. The NFC gets the Monday night game, and it's always the 4-5 matchup, and I hate it. That means you're facing Seattle or San Francisco or
LA.
Thank you. Yes. So that's not going to go well with the way that this is currently playing. I realized they beat the Niners early in the year. I realized that their game against Seattle might be one of the best games of the year. It was exciting. It was fun. It was, Abuka versus JSN, just haymaker after haymaker of these former teammates trying to one-up one another. But I take a look at what I think is going to happen. And I feel the Bucs are going to lose out. That puts you at 7-10. This was a team that we expected to win 12, 13 football games. So at that point, you're cleaning house, you're getting a new coaching staff, and you're addressing a lot of the deficiencies on the route. The best way to do that for the long term is the draft. If the Bucs are a 7-win football team, you're talking about a difference of between 7 and 9 draft picks in this order, depending on how things shake out. I mean, right now, the Miami Dolphins are projected to have the number 10 pick at 6 and 9. So if they beat Tampa, now all of a sudden Tampa gets to jump them in the draft order because of the tiebreaker. But if the Bucs get in, now you're talking about at best picking at 19. This is a team that needs 2 starting linebackers, at least 1 edge rusher. You're going to need a new running back because I don't think Rashad comes back. You're going to need defensive line rotational help. You're going to need offensive line depth. Why would you not want to have Jason Light work his magic in the draft as he has done so often and get better picks in each and every round to set up the future of this team? So now we're not talking about a potential Super Bowl window closing in the next 2 seasons. You're talking about you now have a very young core of players that can continue to carry you into the next decade with the way that they've been drafting. So that's kind of my big picture look at it. Yeah, I would love for the Bucs to find their way into the playoffs. And Marcus, as you said, kind of create some chaos. Go out there and beat LA, who a lot of people think will win the Super Bowl. Beat them in the first round and then move on to the division round. That'd be a blast. We'd have so much fun talking about that. I just don't see it happen.
Look, I will say, and again, I know, James, that you were kind of playing the devil's advocate role, but you still overall do want to see them make the playoffs. Um, I still think, too, there will always be, especially for this franchise, there will always be value in winning your division and making the playoffs. No one's ever won the NFC South 5 straight years. The Bucs, I don't have to give everyone a history lesson on how bad most of the 80s and early 90s were. I don't
Yeah,
have to
just
give a
watch
history.
Raise the Flags.
Right. I don't have to give a history lesson on 2008 to 2019. There has been so much frustration in this organization. So I will always value putting a banner up, even if it's to go get your face pushed in the first round of the playoffs, because I do think if they have to play the Rams again, that's what will happen. I was kind of rooting for the Rams against Seattle in that heck of a ball game last week, because at least with Seattle, I've seen the Bucs do it, even if it was fortuitous with the doink off the helmet that Lavoie intercepted. Um, I can see that, but I just cannot see the Bucs covering Puka Nacua and Devontae Adams. And again, I know Cooper Kupp and JSN are awesome too, but again, at least I've seen that. So I will say that I still hope that this is what happens, but again, it's obvious that when you lose 6 or 7, I just don't see how you go from I don't see how you refine the team that was 6-2, and it's so sad that we're going from, oh, could the Bucks be a 1 or 2 seed in the NFC to, well, I think they could get up to 10 or 11 in the draft order. Like that's such a sad reality that it's become to that here late in the season. But again, I do think that there's always going to be value in trying to figure it out and win. Again, even if you're right, James, they probably will be on Monday. I've been at, the last couple of those in person, and you're the last game up. You're like, oh, well, let's see what Tampa can do in prime time and everything. And, the Dallas game was not fun in 2022. There's been some other ones in there, obviously, too. But the last thing for you guys here before we run out of time with the Around the League segment. We were kind of hitting on this Sunday in the Around the League segment, but again, to get your guys' opinions, I know Marky's kind of hit on it a little bit there, but again, from a neutral perspective, I think this could be a heck of a playoffs, because I have no idea who the real favorites are. And again, Baltimore took another step last night towards not being in the playoffs, Lamar getting banged up and then blowing the lead to New England. So, I mean, all the most accomplished guys, with the exception of Josh Allen in the AFC, are going to be out of the playoffs. And the NFC, the most accomplished team like Philly, has not looked like themselves for weeks. So, again, from a neutral standpoint, I'm really excited about the postseason. I just wish, obviously, Tampa was a part of it.
Yeah, me too. And I think this week you're going to see a little preview of some playoff football when you got the Bears and 49ers, you got the Eagles and Bills. I'm not sure if Philly can go in Buffalo and win. Like Buffalo, Josh Allen is like the last of the Mohicans of that era of quarterbacks as far as this season. The familiar faces we've seen in the playoffs. But the Seahawks and Panthers, I'm going to tell you right now, I actually think that Carolina's going to win that game. I just do. I think they're at home. I think what they did last night yesterday by beating Tampa Bay, getting in the first place. They are a first place team. And Seattle, had a very emotional, come from behind win against the Rams. And I just think that Carolina is going to beat them. And that's going to change. That's going to shake up Seattle's situation. It's going to shake up the Bucs situation. And I think it's going to send a message around the league. But I do think it's just as wide open as it can be. Just like I said about the college football playoff. Right now, I couldn't tell you who's going to win it. I don't know. I don't know how good like Texas Tech is, but the way Oregon looked and Ohio State is Ohio State. To me, when you look at the NFL playoffs situation, there's no clear-cut favorite. I think it's like boxing. Like I said, styles make fights. It's going to depend on who plays who and where and when.
Yeah, and I'll tell you, I wanted to be excited about the Christmas Day slate. I really, really did. Washington, obviously, they've dealt with a lot of problems this year, Jaden Daniels being hurt and everything, so that game isn't as exciting. The Lions, they already are hurting in terms of being able to make the playoffs, so that's going to be a must-win for them. Denver, they're going to wax Kansas City. That's going to be an absolute slaughter. But I'll tell you, to me, the most playoff feeling game of this week's slate, and I'm with you guys. I'm really excited for how these playoffs could shake out just because of how many different teams we are seeing in it. Houston and the Chargers. on Saturday is going to be must-see television. These teams are currently the 6 and 7 seeds in the AFC playoffs. So if a couple of things go right for the Ravens or the Colts, whoever loses this matchup could be the one on the outside looking in. So those are our two teams. Like they have to be approaching this as a playoff game, because this could very well decide whether or not they're going to get in. So that is the game that I really have circled, that I am by far the most excited to watch of this slate, because that really is the best playoff preview that we're going to get. Marcus, I am with you. Chicago and San Francisco is right behind, in terms of the most exciting games, but that one's not till the very end of Sunday. And I'm excited for what we're going to get on Saturday between the Texans and Chargers. It's going to be a good one.
The Texans are a good commentary on when you play somebody. The Bucs played them early in the year when the Texans were trying to figure it out. If they played each other now, I would not feel great about the rematch. Houston's playing some really good ball. We're going to take our last time out of the show. When we come back, it's time to predict what happens in Miami. We'll go over a few last things with the game coming up next. This is the Locked On Bucs Squad Show. All right, one final segment here. And again, going to do score predictions in just a moment. But one more thing I wanted to set you guys up for before we get to final score predictions. And James, I know that you do not give final score predictions on these. But before we get to that, I did want to get your guys' thoughts on Quinn Ewers and just the sentiment that here's another backup that you would think for the world you would be able to confuse and frustrate, but Tampa has not been able to do that. So are you ultimately glad Quinn Ewers is playing for Miami? Would you rather see Tua? Thoughts on their quarterback situation?
You got it, John.
I would much rather see Tua. With Tua, what you're getting, right? He may be able to stretch the field a little bit better. He has the chemistry with Waddle. Obviously, Tyreek is thrilled that he's gone. That's a story for Locked On Dolphins. But no, I would much rather face Tua. And I think Mike McDaniel, I know there were the reports that he was safe over the weekend, that he was not going to get fired. We'll see if that changes after you got trounced the way you did to the Cincinnati Bengals at home. But I think he's a smart enough offensive mind that he can create a game plan to mitigate risk by Quinn Ewers. It's going to be a heavy dose of HN. Like 100%, it's going to be a lot of HN, and we're talking a guy that has rushed for 100 yards multiple times this year. He's got almost 1,300 rushing yards on the year. He is a threat to score from anywhere on the field. He can catch the ball out of the backfield. Like, he is going to be their biggest weapon. And if he's not on the field, Ollie Gordon's pretty solid himself for a young running back. So historically, Todd Bowles, at least with the Bucs, not done a great job of creating game plans and executing game plans against backup quarterbacks, against inexperienced quarterbacks. Once he sees you, with the defensive coordinator in him, the defensive mind, once he sees you, he gets a beat on you, and he'll be able to figure it out from there. The first go around, typically not great. So that, given how the defense is played, given Todd Bowles' history, I don't have a great feeling about facing Quinn Ewers. And I don't think Quinn Ewers is all that great. I just think the Dolphins' game plan is going to be able to take advantage of this Buccaneers team.
Yeah, I don't think we know what we're going to get out of Quinn Ewers either. I mean, he turned the ball over twice, but he was 20 of 30 for 260, and he didn't get sacked. A-Chain, I mean, he's a dude. I mean, 1,300 yards in this league, which is a passing league, if you will. It's not 40 years ago when you have 5 or 6 running backs with 1,000 yards, 1,500 yards. This is a passing league, and this man has 1,300 yards, respectively. So I also think, I'm just not sure if the Bucs can match up with Waddle. I don't know. When you watch guys like Dean get beat, standing flat foot in the red zone and give up a touchdown pass. I mean, I probably could have ran that route and caught it on them too. And I like those defensive backs. Honestly, I don't think that they're playing with a lot of confidence. So I'm not sure how this defense is going to come up with. They need to come up with a way to get Ewers on the ground. I mean, Tua, I think if Tua was playing, I would have a lot more confidence in the Bucs. But with Ewers out there, like, you know, he can move around a little bit. I mean, he's kind of wiry with it. They have nothing to lose, everything to gain. And I think if Miami runs the ball successfully, it could come. I think that can cause some problems for Tampa Bay. So you don't want this running back DA to just get out there and start getting busy on you, and then they'll find a way to throw the ball over your head. But I just think if they can get Ewers on the ground, get them behind the sticks. They just haven't been able to get anybody behind the sticks. There's just not a lot of havoc plays on defense, hurries and pass breakups and sacks, you know, calls, fumbles. Like, you need havoc plays. And I think this is a game that they can use to fine-tune some things on both sides of the ball. I think it could be a shootout. If Miami doesn't give up 21 points in the third quarter, it's a different ball game. And I know if was a fifth, we all be drunk. But I'm just telling you right now, if they don't just somehow find a way to get dialed up in that third quarter like that with turnovers and stuff, that's a different ball game. I mean, Joe Burrow, I mean, he's going to get his numbers regardless if the Bengals win or lose. That's all the Bengals care about is getting the ball to your two receivers and your quarterback staying healthy. As far as defense, you know, they can't stop a nosebleed from running. So it's just I just think that this is a dangerous game because when you play at Miami, guys hang out all night and party. They just do. I mean, you get distracted down on South Beach, especially if you think your season is over. And if you got some young guys out there that say, hey, I'll be back next year. But a guy like Mike Evans will be in his playbook that night. And, you know, he's still trying to, you know, further his legacy and get back in these playoffs. And I'm not sure if everybody's on the same page as far as that. I think it's a dangerous game. But here's my score prediction. I'm going to pick the Dolphins in a shootout. I got them 34-31.
All right. Yeah, no, I will say that on the Quinn Ewers subject again, I don't think there's a lot film wise to suggest that you should be ultimately more worried, but it's the momentum of the season. It's the momentum of how things have seemed to work out for Tampa. And with Tua, you kind of knew there's going to be an interception in there somewhere. He's amongst the league leaders in INTs this year. Quinn Ewers did throw a couple, so I mean that might very well become his forte. I know that was a very rough preseason for him also, but it's just kind of the momentum of the season that continues to pass Tampa by. You guys mentioned Devin Achane, and certainly his season has been robust. He's also the second leading receiver for Miami. Now, granted, that would not have been the case if Tyreek Hill had been healthy this season, but he has been a big player. And then also Darren Waller, who has come on for Miami the last several weeks, was out for the beginning of the season. But I think of the way Kyle Pitts has just owned Tampa for whatever reason for the last couple of seasons. I think of the way Tampa has struggled in zone coverage and in the middle of the field in particular. Having a pass-catching running back and a good tight end is not a great formula to stress your linebackers out that way. But I know Marcus just gave his score prediction. James, I know you don't do score predictions, but give us some of, again, your keys to the game.
Yeah, well, and I will say I picked up Darren Waller in fantasy to start in fantasy championship weekend. Unfortunately, I'm not going to make it there. Look, I'm 100% with Marcus. You have to find a way to bring Ewers down, and you need to find a way to get the Dolphins behind the sticks, because even though Achane is a weapon out of the backfield in the passing game, you know, this is a dude that's averaging 6 yards a carry. But one of the things that the Bucs did do really well was defend against a solid running back duo in Carolina there in Dowdle and Hubbard. I mean, you had Dowdle rushed for 29 yards, Hubbard rushed for 27. Now they only had a combined 15 opportunities, but the run defense actually looked really good against them. So you would hope that they could parlay that into some success this week. But to be fair, Dowdle, for as hot as he was earlier this year, and Hubbard, for as hot as he was all of last year, neither one of those guys are Devon Achane. Neither one of them had the speed or the game-breaking ability that he does. So that is going to be the big key matchup in this one is, can you contain a running back that can take over a game? You weren't able to do it against Bijan. You weren't able to do it against Travion Henderson. I guess to a certain extent, you did it against James Cook, but that has been a struggle since the bye week, and that's going to be the biggest thing. Is can the defense do enough to keep the offense in the game? And then the key on that side, it's all about Grizzard. I really think that this is kind of a do or die moment for him. Is he going to be able to open up this offense a little bit? Is he actually going to take advantage of having all four of those receivers on the field? Are we going to see a little bit more of the pony package with Bucky and Rashad out there together? What kind of bag of tricks can he pull out knowing that the season is on the line? At the end of the day, though, I know the Bucs are 5.5-point favorites. I still can't pick those guys to win a game when they've shown me time and again since the end of October that they can't win a game. So I do lean the Dolphins. I'll make my final decision on Friday, but it's now or never. Like literally, this is the end of the road for this Buccaneers team if they can't get a win against a Dolphins team that is starting Quinn Ewers.
I think my keys for the game would be this, and I'm probably going to go with my coaches speak. I think the Bucs need to win the turnover battle. I think they need to win the rush yard battle and time of possession. I think they need to find a way to keep Achane off the field. I mean, he can't beat you if he's watching. And I think they need touchdowns in the red zone. And I think Tampa Bay needs some form of a 2-score lead, whether it's 10 points or whether it's 14 points or 13. They need to find a way to get it out of a one-possession game. I know they put the graphic up under 4 points or less. They were 5-1 or whatever it was. But at the same token, if this game is close, they're going to lose. It doesn't matter who has the ball last. The Bucs are just going to get beat. And so I really think that they need to have about 3 sacks. They need to be like around 27% defensively on third down conversion rate. I mean, stuff like that has to start to kick in. But I think the turnover battle, rushing, sacks, they got to get this Quinn and those guys in long yardage. Achane will beat you. He will beat you, and he'll beat the brakes off of you too, because he doesn't care about you. He's going to get his numbers. He's going to, he's a young guy and he's pretty good. So you have to understand that this is a situation that the Bucs are very unfamiliar with, and we're going to see if they have a chin, see if they can respond. But those are my keys to the game, and I probably can give you 1 or 2 more. I like Baker probably. I'm going to throw one out there for you for FanDuel. I think Baker has to rush for about 40 yards. Baker's legs actually saved the Bucs offensively in this last game. I mean, he had the one rush coming out of halftime, and then that one he had in the fourth quarter in the 2-minute situation. That was a long, big run. I'm not sure if he got tired. I mean, he might have got tired on that and threw the ball to the other team. But I just think those are my keys to the game. But the Bucs are not in a good place right now.
So I'm going to be Captain Optimist this week. I'm going to say the Bucs will actually get rid of this 3-game losing skid. To be fair, it's been 3 losses, win 3 losses. So I'm going to say that Miami is still in just complete figure things out mode. They really do not care about the result of the game. They're looking for tape on guys not named Tua right now to see if they can move on from him in the offseason. They're going to lean on Achane, but Tampa's run defense, I know it's not been as stifling as years past, but still top 6 or 7 in the NFL. And again, I just find it hard to believe that this team from the first 8 games of the season is just nowhere in there. Again, I know it's technically not, and I'm not saying they're going to be redeemed by beating Miami. But I just think the Dolphins don't have a whole lot on the line here. And I think that while they'd love to get a win, their professionals are going to play hard. I don't think that this team trying to game 2 of Quinn Ewers is going to be very clutch, and they might just gift Tampa to win. Maybe Tampa doesn't even take it, but I'm going to go something around 28-20 Buccaneers. And again, as I said in the open, I want them to put the pedal to the metal, throw the ball down the field against this team. Please use your play action. Find us some stuff to go in the vertical passing game. You've got the weapons. Miami has been fine in pass defense wise. I think they're around 10th, 12th in the league. But if you're going to break this stuff out, you got to do it now or never. That is going to do it for this Locked On Bucs Squad show. Again, we are going to be back on Sunday reacting to the Bucs and Dolphins game. And of course, on the channel, James will have you covered throughout the week, getting you set for a big Week 17 battle. But that is going to do it for us. Until next time, fire the cannons.